On a cold Thursday evening in Manhattan, the monarch glittered with polished marble, low golden lights, and the quiet arrogance of wealth. Grace Mitchell moved through the dining room with her usual steady grace, unaware that tonight the city's unspoken hierarchy was about to crush straight into her path. It began when Eleanor Blackwood, mother of the most feared man in New York, lifted her glass and said loudly enough for half the room to hear, "Is this what passes for service here? Or did they drag you in off the street?" Grace stopped at her table, her hands steady even as something inside her twisted. "Ma'am," she said, "I'm here to help with anything you need." Eleanor leaned back, eyes cold and amused. "Good. Then explain why I've already lost my appetite just looking at you." Across the room, forks stilled. Conversations dimmed. Grace felt the sharp sting of being judged not just as a server, but as someone the world believed stood on the lowest rung. What none of them knew was that this single moment, this single insult, would ignite a chain of events powerful enough to shake the Blackwood Empire itself. If this opening pulls you in, hit like and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so you never miss the next chapter. The moment Eleanor Blackwood's words struck the air, the monarch's glittering dining room seemed to fold in on itself. Servers paused mid-step. A couple at the nearest table turned their heads just enough to pretend they weren't listening. Even the soft jazz floating from the grand piano lost its warmth. Grace Mitchell stood there, her hands clasped around the breadbasket as if holding something far more fragile than pastries. Her last thread of composure. Eleanor's eyes narrowed with a slow, practiced cruelty. "Well," she demanded, "aren't you going to apologize for ruining my evening?" Grace didn't move, didn't blink. Her voice came out steady but low enough only the table could hear. "Ma'am, I haven't done anything wrong." A few guests exchanged glances, uncomfortable, almost guilty. They knew exactly what was happening. They'd seen wealthy patrons push workers to their breaking points. But tonight felt different. It felt deliberate, personal. Grace set the bread gently on the table. Her heart pounded not with fear, but with something buried deeper. Exhaustion. 7 years of smiling through disrespect. 7 years of pretending words didn't bruise. Tonight they bruised. Eleanor leaned forward, her diamonds catching the chandelier light like small, sharp stars. "You will apologize," she hissed, "or you'll be out on the street before dessert." Grace inhaled slowly, feeling the weight of every sacrifice she'd made. Her brother's tuition, her mother's memory, her father's quiet encouragement. All of it balanced on this one moment. "I won't apologize for something I didn't do," she said. Her manager appeared instantly, as if summoned by the tension. Richard Porter's face held the familiar look of a man who feared the wrong person. "Grace," he whispered harshly, "say you're sorry. Now." The silence around the table thickened. Then Grace saw something in Eleanor's expression. Victory. The pleasure of seeing someone beneath her forced to kneel metaphorically, if not literally. That was the moment something inside Grace snapped. She lifted the plate of salmon. Eleanor smirked. And Grace tipped it slowly, deliberately, letting the food slide over Eleanor's immaculate hair and down her designer dress in one unbroken ribbon of sauce and vegetables. Gasps broke across the dining room like shattered glass. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to stop breathing. Then Eleanor screamed. The sound sliced through the monarch, high, furious, shaking with disbelief. You nobody! How dare you!" Her friends scrambled to help her, but she shoved them away. Grace didn't flinch. She simply unknotted her apron, folded it once, and placed it on the empty corner of the now silent table. "I'd rather lose my job," she said softly, "than lose my dignity." She walked out before anyone could respond. She didn't rush, didn't look back. The sound of her heels striking the marble floor echoed through the room like a final declaration. But the moment she pushed through the monarch's doors into the cold Manhattan night, her breath hitched. The strength she'd held inside crumbled. Her legs trembled violently. She grabbed a street lamp to steady herself. "What did I just do?" she whispered. No answer came. Only the wind, sharp, unforgiving, sweeping against her coat. She rode the bus home in silence, staring at blurred city lights while her mind raced through bills, debt, and her brother Noah's future. She imagined him reading late into the night, dreaming of medical school. She imagined the disappointment in his eyes when she told him she'd lost everything. She didn't cry until she stepped off the bus. She didn't stop crying until she reached her apartment door. Noah opened it before she could even knock. His face, bright and hopeful, twisted instantly into worry. "Grace, what happened?" He listened as she told him everything. Not once did he interrupt. Not once did he look away. When she finished, he sat beside her on their couch, small, worn, and the heart of their tiny home. "You did the right thing," Noah said quietly. "If you apologized to her, you wouldn't be my sister." Grace laughed weakly through tears. "Being your sister is the only thing I'm still sure I'm good at." Days passed. 17 restaurants rejected her before she even sat down. One kind manager finally said what none of the others dared to speak aloud. "You're blacklisted, Miss Mitchell. No one wants trouble with the Blackwood family." Grace thanked him and left, though inside she felt something sink, heavy and cold. Each night, Noah pretended he'd eaten dinner at school just so she could eat more. He did his homework by the dimmest lamp to save electricity. He tried to protect her the only way a 14-year-old could. Meanwhile, Eleanor Blackwood was not finished. The humiliation she had suffered, the video filmed by a stranger shared millions of times, had spread too quickly and too widely for her to control. The internet called her entitled, cruel, a symbol of everything wrong with old money and unchecked power. Headlines mocked her. Influencers reenacted the Salmon scene. Talk shows roasted her. And rather than reflect, Eleanor raged. In her penthouse, she hurled a champagne glass at her wall. "I'll destroy her," she snarled at her reflection. "I'll destroy that little waitress if it's the last thing I do." Her son, Nathaniel Blackwood, watched the viral video with a different expression. Curiosity, then anger, but not at Grace. He replayed the moment Grace refused to fold. The moment she stood tall. The moment she walked away, not broken but unbent. He'd grown up in a world where power meant obedience, where people folded under pressure, some before he even spoke. Grace Mitchell did not fold. "Find her," he told his right-hand man, Marcus Chen. "I want to speak with her." Grace wasn't prepared when the black Maybach rolled up in front of her building. She wasn't prepared when Marcus stepped out, impeccably dressed and calm as water. She certainly wasn't prepared when he said, "Miss Mitchell, Mr. Blackwood requests a meeting." Her fear was instant and instinctive. If he wants to threaten me, if he wants to scare me into disappearing, tell him I have nothing left to lose. Marcus shook his head. "If he wanted to harm you, Miss Mitchell, he wouldn't send a car. He would simply make it happen. The fact that I'm standing here means he wants to talk." Grace wasn't sure whether that comforted her or terrified her more. The elevator ride to the 72nd floor felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world she'd only seen in movies. Glass walls, steel beams, art worth more than her entire life savings. And then Nathaniel Blackwood walked in. Cold. Beautiful in a way that didn't soften anything about him. His eyes were winter gray, unreadable, unwavering. "Miss Mitchell," he said, "thank you for coming." She swallowed. "I didn't think I had much of a choice." "You had every choice," he replied. "That's why you're here." He studied her for a long moment before speaking again. "I watched the video. All of it. And I want to ask one question. Not out of arrogance, but out of genuine curiosity." Grace braced herself. "Why didn't you bow to her?" he asked. "Everyone bows to my mother." "Everyone." Grace lifted her chin. "Because respect should be earned, not demanded." Something flickered in Nathaniel's expression, a crack in the ice. He offered her a job. High-ranking one. At the Sterling, one of the most prestigious restaurants in New York. Grace almost laughed. Almost walked away. "Why me?" "Because you have something no one on my payroll seems to have," he said. "A spine." She accepted with conditions. She would not compromise her morals. She would not mistreat staff. She would not participate in anything illegal. Nathaniel agreed almost too easily. And then everything changed. Grace didn't just manage the Sterling, she transformed it. Employees who had once feared authority now trusted it. Customers noticed. Reviews soared. Nathaniel visited more frequently, always lingering longer than business required. But Eleanor, she seethed. When she learned Grace was working for Nathaniel, something inside her snapped. Pride curdled into obsession. One afternoon, she stormed into the Sterling, dressed in black silk and fury. "So," she said loudly, "this is the little girl controlling my son." Grace stepped between her staff and the storm brewing at the entrance. "Mrs. Blackwood, please leave." Eleanor's smile was venomous. "You think he cares about you. Your convenience. Distraction. You will never matter in a world like ours." Then she whispered the sharpest threat of all. "I know about your brother. I know where he studies. You should pray nothing unfortunate happens." Grace's blood ran cold. Before she could respond, Nathaniel appeared behind Eleanor. "Mother," he said, his voice the calm before a hurricane. "Step outside." The argument outside could be heard even through the glass. "You threaten her again," Nathaniel warned, "and I cut you off from everything. Money, influence, protection. All of it." Eleanor's eyes widened. For the first time in decades, she realized her son was not a boy she could manipulate. He was a man she had pushed too far. But even then she didn't stop. 3 days later, Noah disappeared. Grace's world caved in. A message arrived. "Tell your boyfriend to come find us. No police. Or the boy dies." Grace collapsed. Nathaniel arrived within minutes. His face, usually unreadable, burned with a cold rage she'd never imagined. "I'll get him back," he said. "I swear it." And he did. The warehouse raid was swift, brutal, and controlled. Not a massacre, but justice delivered with precision. Noah was saved before a single bruise could form. Grace hugged her brother so tightly he could barely breathe. Back in the city, Nathaniel confronted the one person he hadn't wanted to believe capable of such betrayal. "Did you give them her name? Her address? Her brother?" he asked quietly. Eleanor tried to defend herself, tried to blame others. But the words sounded hollow even to her own ears. Nathaniel turned away. "You're done," he said. "Not just with them. With me." He froze her accounts, severed her access to the Blackwood empire, and stripped her of the influence she had wielded like a weapon for decades. Her downfall was swift and merciless, because it was self-inflicted. Night after night, she watched her phone, waiting for a message from the son she once controlled. Never came. Back at the Sterling, Grace's life moved forward. Customers loved her. Staff adored her. Noah thrived in school. Nathaniel stood by her, not as a savior but as a partner. And when the city whispered about Eleanor Blackwood's spectacular fall from grace, many agreed. It was justice, long overdue. But Grace, she didn't celebrate. Her victory was simply this: Eleanor Blackwood could no longer hurt anyone. And that was enough. Yet the story wasn't finished. Because when Eleanor made her final attempt to regain control, her final attempt to reclaim the power she once used to crush others, the consequences were waiting for her. And they were absolute. What happened to Eleanor next shocked even the Blackwood family, and ended her reign forever. In the weeks that followed, life settled into a rhythm Grace had never known. Steady, honest, safe. Noah laughed more. The staff at the Sterling walked with their heads higher. And Grace, for the first time in years, allowed herself to breathe without fear of what tomorrow might steal from her. She didn't forget what she had endured, but she no longer carried it as a wound. It became a quiet reminder that some battles aren't chosen. They arrive uninvited. And what matters is who we decide to be when they do. Nathaniel changed too. His sharp edges softened, not because Grace asked him to, but because standing beside someone who refused to bend taught him a different kind of strength. He learned that power without conscience is nothing more than noise, and silence without truth can destroy everything it touches. One evening after closing, Grace stood by the window overlooking the city. The lights shimmered across the skyline, and in their reflection she saw not the woman who once walked out of the Monarch shaking, but someone rebuilt, piece by piece, through resilience, courage, and the rare grace of second chances. Behind her, Noah's laughter echoed from the kitchen, and Nathaniel's voice followed after, warm in a way she once believed impossible for him. It was a simple moment, but it held everything she had fought for. And as she rested her hand against the cool glass, she understood the quiet truth of her journey. Darkness doesn't disappear, it just loses its power when we stop facing it alone. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so more people can find strength in stories like this.